Okay. Well, it's saying we're live. So, hey, everybody. Welcome to Brian's Man Cave. Today, I have a special guest today, Jessie Blaze Snider. Um, well, for those who might not know, he's an American comic book writer, voiceover actor, TV, radio host, rock musician. I mean, this guy's done everything. so, well, not everything,
Out
but
of
I mean,
necessity.
he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of stuff. And yeah, just glad to have him here on the show.
Thanks
Um,
for having me. Glad to be here.
yeah. Well, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to lately.
Well, I'm a big geek, and I kind of grew up existentially in the public eye and in this like sort of superficial Hollywood world and dealing with people being affected by celebrities and all this stuff. And whatever, I just got to get over this. So talking about it, I always hate bringing it up, but if you're talking about me at my heart, my father's the lead singer of the band Twisted Sister, and I just sort of was engaged with a very superficial reality from the moment I was born, and I hated that reality. I hated people who were approaching me and coming up to me because they wanted to be close to this person who had this arbitrary sort of idea about them. Most of the time, people had no concept of who my father was or what his music was or anything. They just liked the idea of celebrity. And very quickly, I just saw like, I don't like any of this superficial world we're living in. And I chose to go into geek culture and comic books specifically. I'm a writer. I could have picked television, I could have picked film, but I don't like that world. I love the world of craftsmen. I'm a big toy guy. I love sculptors. I'm a huge fan of the Four Horsemen Studios, and I'm just a huge fan of these artists that make comic books. I feel like we're living in a modern renaissance, and nobody's giving proper credit to the heights that these artists have reached. Yesterday, when we had the Renaissance of old, they were recreating accurate depictions of the world around them. And it's beautiful. I'm not knocking the Renaissance. The Renaissance is great. But what's happening today is even more amazing because of toys and comic books. These sculptors and artists are being forced to work and learn and build constantly. They're not getting paid and appreciated as much as they should. So they're constantly hustling and working and improving their craft. And there are just so many wonderful, wonderful artists in this world. And for me, when I started writing, as a teenager and deciding that I was going to get into writing, and my father actually suggested that. Well, he told me that they say you should write what you read, and I read a lot of comics. And when I started thinking about that, I just went, oh my God, imagine I could work with some of these people that I love. Imagine I could write a story for Dale Keown or Art Adams or, Dave Johnson or Jason Pearson, God rest his soul. And I did, I did get to work with Jason Pearson, for example, before he passed away. And I did get to work with Phil Hester. And there are so many people who I've gotten to work with that I'm just so grateful. I got the best job there is. I come up with silly things, and then I have awesome artists draw my silly ideas. So I'm just really grateful to do what I do, and that I've been able to carve out a little niche in the business. I've worked for Marvel, I've worked for DC, Disney, Pixar, the Muppets, helped reinvent Evil Ernie for Dynamite, and did the launch of Soft Wood for Heavy Metal magazine. Right now I'm working with Merck Publishing on a book called Guns and Angels that's being raised on Kickstarter. If any of you guys are Miss Meow fans or Death Rage fans. And, and now I've got King of Kings #1 on Kickstarter, which is really my first full-up miniseries that I produced the hard and long way, designing tons of characters, color designing tons of characters, working with everybody the right way, and laying out all my own money. And long story short, I just kind of really went through the dark night of the soul for the past 6 years. I had a fire, I had a divorce, just so many different things that I've been dealing with. And I had to stop production of my book. So we came back around full circle 3 years ago, I guess, or maybe a little bit more now. We tried to raise on Indiegogo, and we were shadow banned. And I didn't know that. So I was like depressed. I thought I failed and failed all my friends about our book. And as it turns out, that wasn't the case. So we're back on Kickstarter, and we already made our initial raise to make sure that the book gets published. And now we're raising to be able to finish the second issue, which just needs to be colored and lettered, and the third issue, which is the same, and the fourth issue, which needs to be drawn. So I'm going to be doing a couple campaigns until we get to the end of the line to get this book done after, I mean, literally 12 years of working on this thing. And I just have such a passion for this medium. I'm so frustrated by what has happened to it. And I'm boy, can I tell you stories about all the ways in which your favorite shit is getting fucked up all the time. You know, from the other side, as somebody who's been pitching comic books since I was a teenager. I'm 40.
Yeah, I mean, you're the same age as my wife, so and we're both September babies.
Hey, you're Virgo?
Yeah.
My son's a September baby too, and my mom, so we got a lot of Virgos in the family.
Awesome. Yeah, well, so you would say you're really primarily on the comic book side of everything, right? Because when I was
novels that I want to read but haven't gotten around to, because I am more of a comic guy. I do sometimes get into like sci-fi novels. Mostly though, when I'm reading books, I'm reading like nonfiction, Diary of a Yogi kind of stuff, self-help, motivational, religious kind of stuff. You can come in, Miss Parker, but just for a second to sit with me. My baby's been being neglected because I've been on streams all day long.
Oh no.
That's Brian. I'm doing his show. Say hi.
Hi.
Okay. And now, if you could let us stream, I'd appreciate it. I love you. But I apologize. Where was I?
The joys of parenting.
Yes. No, it's wonderful. I'm a big kid, man. I just, that's really the long and short of why I make comic books, and why I love toys, and why I am in the space and the person that I have come to be. I'm just a Care Bear, and I hate where modern geek culture, has gone. All of this stupid warring and infighting and just accusing each other of things and self-righteousness. I mean, Superman and Batman would never freaking do this. They are coming from two different places, and they always work their shit out, and yet the fans can't freaking work their shit out. Granted, we're being instigated from on high by various social media influencers and whatnot on both sides, and I just wish everybody would just stop, and we could get back to having fun and worshiping at the altar of wonderful myths and the craftsmen who create them.
So you're talking a lot about, say, the movies, for instance, that, I mean, there's just been, if you think about the last probably 4, 5, 6 years, every movie's during the summer and all that, the big blockbusters, they're all been the Marvel movies and the DC movies. And is there any that you actually liked over the years, or do you think they're all just kind of?
When I was growing up, I watched so many movies. I started as a young guy. I used to watch comedies. I was obsessed with comedy movies. I would literally wake up like an hour early for school, and I would watch half of a movie before I went to school. Blues Brothers, Blazing Saddles, Marx Brothers, really just classic comedy stuff. And then as I got older, I expanded into lots of geek culture stuff because I became, a geek myself and was reading comics. So, people would recommend movies. And then I started working at Blockbuster Video. And Blockbuster Video was like the moment really changed for me because I think I got like 5 free rentals a week or something like that. But you were able to really take home a lot of flicks. And the more you know about movies and movie making and writing, the easier it is to hate on everything. So I made a real concerted effort at the time as I became a sort of, an encyclopedia of knowledge when it came to films and comics and things, that I didn't want to be a curmudgeon, because I saw a lot of people online and wherever else who their knowledge was affecting them and making them sort of negative against everything in general. So I try to hold the line in my soul and not go too dark and get too negative about stuff that I really love. I'm slowly ripping my DVDs of Dukes of Hazzard on internal hard drive. Never get tired of that show. It's my favorite TV show of all time. Oh, cool. I've seen some episodes of that one. I lost all this stuff in my fire, but I used to have an amazing collection of VHSs and burnt DVDs from Muppets fans, because I'm a huge Jim Henson fan, his short films and The Great Santa Claus Switch and all these really hardcore, cool Muppet stuff. But, when I did that, I really shifted at that time of just, I went, I'm not going to be like a bitter critic. I want to enjoy these things. So I go into everything with as open a mind as possible, trying to enjoy it for whatever it is. That's not to say that I don't come away with things to say about what they did, but I do try to sort of take it for what it is and sort of appraise its value from the place that it is. You know, case in point, like a Man of Steel. Man of Steel is actually a really well-made movie, and the people who defend Man of Steel, they're not wrong because they don't know any better. They haven't read some of the greatest Superman comic books of all time. They haven't seen how powerful a story is when you have a character who can do literally anything, could kill anybody at any point if he wanted to, refusing to do that, and instead calling to something higher, going, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. I've never been more inspired than when I've read a great Superman comic, when Superman has decided that there's a better way and I'm going to find it. And, you know, it's cool that, you know, Man of Steel is a cool movie, but it's Superman played by Batman. It's a dark and dour and sour version of Superman. It's not Superman from the comics. So, you know, if I'm critiquing it as a comic book fan, it's ass. I hate it. It sucks. If I'm critiquing it as just a moviegoer and like, how much did I get any enjoyment out of this film? Yeah, it's pretty. There's things about it to like. You know, I think Zack Snider is a great filmmaker, honestly, and there's other movies that he's done that I really love. But do I approve of their approach? No, especially because as a businessman, they shot themselves in the dick by making Superman like Batman. Superman has to be Superman. He has to be altruistic and sort of perfect to a certain degree, but always making his life harder by refusing to make his life easier and go the hard way. I'm somebody too, you know, my dad's a rock star. I don't want to ride his coattails. I don't want people to feel that I didn't earn what I have. So I'm always trying to make things a little bit more difficult for myself because I think that that's the honorable thing to do. And that's what Superman does every step of the way. The bigger issue there is Superman. He has been, well, I should say not Superman, but every single character in the DC universe that has ever been published has been on the stands alongside Superman. And what that means is they couldn't be identical to Superman because their book wouldn't sell. You can't sell a book identical to Superman. Every character who had that ho-hum Superman kind of vibe was slowly changed over time, except for the characters in the JSA, who eventually did their ho-hum thing on the JSA. And some of the JSA's vibe was they were basically led by people with similar kind of ideas to Superman, which is great. It makes the Superman, it makes that book work as its own thing. But for movie makers, Warner Brothers, dude, if you don't make Superman right, you screw up all the other dominoes. You knock over Superman, and then he knocks over every other character because everything has to flip. Because everything is based on the fact that they are in a universe where Superman exists. So, like, you know, this is the type of short-sighted vision that you see all the time. You know, I do a podcast called The Coolest Geek Alive, and largely my show is kind of about adaptation, about writing for existing properties and lovingly, you know, giving us what we would like.
Right.
You know, well, we didn't ask for these studios to bastardize the things that we love. We asked if they could bring to life the things that we had already approved of. And the fact that they're just completely ignoring our taste, dude, we created this empire for you. Ignore our taste at your own peril, because we are the people whispering in all the normies' ears. It's like, oh, well, I'll go see that Batman movie after I talk to Jessie, because Jessie knows what he's talking about. And then whatever I say to my buddy when he comes to ask me about that latest geek culture film, and whatever the fans out here in our comments, whatever you guys say, they listen to us. They don't listen to the promotion. They want to know how the fans feel about it, because we're always right. Because there's no difference between fans and mainstream people, except the mainstream people don't take the time to read the things that we take the time to read. And we've been weeding out the shitty things. There's tons of novels and comic books that we've been reading, and we're not screaming to high heaven that they need to be on the big screen. We've been saying that these other things did, and then they're like, going, I mean, not even a half measure. They're coming like a 1%, superficial things, and then they're just reinventing the wheel. Right now, what's going on with James Gunn and his Superman Legacy movie, I mean, again, the optimist in me is trying to not freak out and go, oh, man, he's going to ruin it all. But the part of me that loves comics is like, what the hell is Mr. Terrific doing in this stupid movie? What are you talking about? Why did you cast him? And why did you cast who? And wait. This is a Superman in Smallville film, and all of these other characters exist? Superman is... You're ruining the wonderful shared universe that we have already said we like. And the more decisions like this that send messages to the fans that they're not paying attention to what we like, they're not paying attention to the historical, way in which these characters have been presented to us, and that the more you give me a visual, like the moment I see a young Superman who might not be in a costume or whatever, standing next to a Mr. Terrific in a costume that Mr. Terrific got there before he did. I mean, I love that Mr. Terrific picked up the mantle of Mr. Terrific. One of the fun things about the JSA are all these characters continuing the mantles of. That's why I love Wally West. That's why I love Nightwing. They're trying to carry on a very difficult, sort of moral line in the sand and keep it going. And the JSA is like a perfect example of that. So, oh God, of course you're going to be like, well, we don't want to rob Mr. Terrific of his agency. He's a black man. Of course he invented Mr. Terrific. No, that's not the historical thing. The historical thing is there's a guy, his name is Mr. Terrific. He was on the JSA back in the day. And now there's this new Mr. Terrific, and he's great. He's the smartest guy. He's an Olympian. Like, Mr. Terrific's one of my favorite characters in modern DC lore. I pitched a long time ago a Mr. Terrific and Dr. Midnight miniseries. Not miniseries. Yeah, it was a miniseries with Resurrection Man. It was really, really fun. And I pitched it because I love that character. So, I just want to see these things done right. When they did the New 52 and they reintroduced Mr. Terrific and they gave him all these stupid tattoos, everybody else who knew Mr. Terrific went, that doesn't fit the character. That dude's a freaking scientist and a doctor and an Olympian, and he's like super respectable, and he's not the type of guy who's getting some trendy tattoos on his arm. Like this sort of tone-deaf thinking in the way they're approaching these characters, this sort of just misremembering or completely forgetting or ignoring what has come before you it's just such a dishonor to the brilliant creators, thousands of them, thousands of artists and thousands of writers who have all contributed to the tapestry of the DC universe, the Marvel universe. They are responsible for why we love this thing. And every time you ignore their great ideas, you diss them and you piss off people like me who love and respect them and want to see these guys held up. What's the point of us fighting for them to get a little percentage of money or ownership or whatever else if they're not even going to use any of their good ideas?
Exactly. I mean, you definitely get a lot into the lore and stuff. Like, what did you think of the last Batman movie, for instance? So, where they...
I thought it was really boring.
Yeah, it was different.
I was always... I started with Batman with The Long Halloween. And I think at the time the monthly books were No Man's Land, which I really enjoyed at the time. The Officer Hardback, and there was some really wonderful characters, wonderful writers working on those books at the time. And I've been a Batman fan ever since. They have never gotten Bruce Wayne right on screen. And it's because Hollywood always wants to make their movies about his love interests. And the moment you focus on Bruce Wayne's love interests, you're missing the point. Bruce Wayne is just a fake persona that Batman has. Batman is not concerned about women. That Batman Returns movie kind of gets it a little bit in that, he can't help but be confronted by Catwoman. She keeps coming into his space.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can count on one hand the amount of stories that I've read in the Batman mythology that have been good, that have actually been about Batman and who he's banging. And one of them is The Son of the Demon, which is one of the best Batman stories of all time. And, and that's something that I would love to see them adapt if they are going to play this stupid game. That Batman Rises movie was just very, very disappointing. I mean, if you could have freaking made a version of Son of the Demon that could have been freaking fun. What a great thing to adapt. There's so many wonderful stories that are there to be adapted. Right now, they're talking about adapting Damian Wayne. You still haven't successfully given me Nightwing. You still haven't successfully given me the death of Jason Todd, the revival of Jason Todd. You haven't given me Tim Drake discovering that Bruce Wayne's Batman, getting over there because he knows that Batman needs a Robin. Like, there are so many wonderful stories that come before this Damian Wayne bullshit. And they're just like throwing years of wonderful stories out the window for no good reason. The greatest Batman stories have been some of the greatest reading of my entire life. Anybody would be happy to read the greatest Batman stories ever told. And the fact that they can't get out of their own way to adapt any of them is just like mind-boggling. Not one of these Batman movies, not one of them has adapted anything from the freaking Batman comic books. It's just like, oh, here's the name of a character. Here's the other name of it. It's Gotham City. Like, they just do their own thing. Even the Batmans that, established the thing in the first place. Tim Burton was just doing Tim Burton.
Yeah.
It's not a look at this art, look at this style. Let's bring forth Frank Miller into real life. Actually, Scott Snyder did do some of that in terms of visual stuff when he got to his movies, which was kind of why they were even more disappointing, because the soul of them was all wrong, even though some of the visuals were on point. And that's always disappointing. But I mean, for the most part, it's just been such a disappointing thing as a fan.
What did you find the Bale Batman though? Like,
I mean, I'm like everybody else. I don't super care for Batman Begins. You were asking me about the new one with Robert Pattinson.
Yeah,
it was another Batman Year One kind of thing. And honestly, I'm in the minority here, but the Batman Year One comic books, they're not my favorite. For me, they're just a little boring. And I'd rather be straight in the middle of the action where there are many, many crazy people living in Arkham Asylum, and Batman is harrowed, and he's been through a lot, and living and breathing that world, and focused on his mission and well into it. I don't really like this. Oh well, let's start at the beginning, and we'll
the
put
origin. Yeah.
Get rid of all these fucking orange movies and just throw me into the mix and do something great. That's what I really want to see. So I really didn't super care for Batman Begins, but similar to the Robert Pattinson one, I was like, well, at least they're taking it seriously, which I do appreciate, bringing a certain amount of seriousness to these things, especially for Batman, because Batman's a serious character. It's okay for a little bit of levity here or there. I mean, that's why you have a Robin. That's why you have Joker, and that's why some of the villains are interesting and comedic sometimes.
Yeah.
That you can do both. But of course, The Dark Knight is brilliant. I mean, it's Christopher Nolan is brilliant. They did a really good job with it. I actually had written a lot of very similar stories. Like a year earlier, I did a Batman inventory story for DC Comics before I did a miniseries for them, and I was kind of blown away when I saw The Dark Knight, because me and Dave Goyer had a lot of similar ideas. With the Joker, threatening to blow up bridges and kind of messing with people psychologically. I did a lot of that stuff in an April Fool's Day special that I wrote for them that never came out. So I appreciated that one, and I liked that one. And if Heath Ledger had survived, I think the third one would have been really great.
It would have been a lot different for sure. It would have been a lot different.
And if you've ever looked into it, because I don't want to repeat it wrong, but the plans that they had for that one that I had looked at a while back, I was like, oh, that would have been really great. That would have been the closest thing that we'd ever gotten to the Batman that I've grown up reading, and I've been waiting for them to put on the big screen. But I mean, when I got to the third one, I felt kind of similar to the Batman Begins. I'm like, there are so many better versions of these stories, and they're separate. Just tell the fucking Bane story. It's a great one. And put him there with his little flunkies and have him blowing up Arkham Asylum and letting out all these crazy people. And Batman has to take these guys one by one. And now he's exhausted. And Bane shows up and breaks his back. Like, that's cool. Do a two-parter. Make it epic. Yeah, do a three-parter. Do Jean Paul Valley in the middle. Asada. And there's no reason to rush through and like, just so much seems to me like there are mandates coming from on high to like add more characters so that we can sell more merchandise and more. There are ways to do that, man. You get one scene at the beginning of Arkham Asylum, whatever else. Here you go. It's got a bunch of visualizations of a couple different characters. A couple different people show up, but they show up in little bit parts that make you want to see them again. Not showing up as like, Bane and Talia al Ghul, sharing like the same amount of vibe together. Like, no, man, like give me a Bane movie. Give me a Bane movie that shows a cool psychological
a little
villain.
bit more in his character, a little bit more about who he is, or like you get a little bit of it. Like they kind of go into the backstory of being in the hole and all that stuff, and you get some grasp of it. But I think they could have expanded a little bit more. Even I guess like you said, if Heath Ledger would have survived and been able to carry on the Joker, maybe would have got a little bit more story or substance out of it. And then, of course, then we get this other movie that comes out that's just about the Joker, which is just a completely different take on the Joker now. And
which is interesting. They said that they were going to introduce the concept of the Elseworld story into the James Gunn universe, which honestly, it's just a little too soon for me because they still have not done a good job about making a foundational Superman. Superman in particular is like the most important piece of the DC universe. And if you don't nail him, Elseworlds don't work. You can't adapt Justice League The Nail unless you nail Superman. If they made Justice League The Nail tomorrow, they'd be like, really? The world's so different because Superman wasn't there? Why? Well, because Superman is the moral compass of the DC universe, and he's the one that everybody looks to. He's the most powerful guy who draws the line at killing people and is always trying to find a better way. This is very important stuff. You want to do an Elseworld take on Superman, you better get Superman right. Because every Elseworld take on Batman or anything is based on a very fundamental approach to Batman, Superman, the Justice League that has been done over and over and over and over again. Tried and true because we all like it. And they keep trying to bring something new to the table or whatever, reinvent the wheel because they think they know better than the greatest minds in comic books. There's tons of writers and tons of artists that DC and Marvel could be hiring. And generally speaking, they're hiring the best and the brightest that they can. Sometimes, especially nowadays, we're not exactly getting the best and the brightest to be writing these stories. If we were, Chuck Dixon would still be working at DC writing stories. That man has never written a bad Robin, Nightwing, Batman story. I've never read anything from him at DC that I didn't love. So, literally the fact that he's not working anymore is like, this is the intellect that we're dealing with nowadays with these books. They think that they can just reinvent the thing and they don't have to honor the past. But for the past 60 years, we've, as fans, have been playing a game of looking at the stuff that we like, loving it, going, you know what? I love this so much. I want to go play this game too. I want to play with these characters. It was my dream to be able to write a definitive Batman story, to give another little piece of mythology that the fans would love. That's all I wanted to do. And oh my God, did Marvel and DC just like make me freaking take it in the nose? What is it? Take it through the nose? Like just working so hard to give them things, give them great ideas, like things that I know will sell. You don't need my name on it. This will sell. I got a book. It's going to be Dead Man, and he's going to be in Haley's Circus now that you killed Haley's Circus. And Dead Man can now possess his own corpse. Biggest problem with Dead Man, he's not in the book. He's not in the book. Hey, it's Batman and Dead Man, and they're teamed up. It's just a ghost hanging out with Batman. Or it's just Dead Man taking possession of some dude who looks normal. It's the one thing about Dead Man that sucks. The Boston Brand, the character's great, the visual's great, but he's not in his own book. Hey, DC, I got an idea. Let's make Boston Brand a character in his own book. Better yet, he's a zombie. These sorts of ideas, they just like, they like, oh, okay. But then it just goes nowhere because they don't actually see the value when people are bringing that kind of stuff. And, most of the people in comics, honestly, they're not like me. They're just kind of, my best buddy, Aaron Sparrow, he and I have been best friends since I started working at Boom Kids years ago, doing Toy Story comic books and Muppet comic books. And, he says famously that everybody who approached him that day at San Diego Comic-Con, except for me, was just like, hey, I'd really like some work. I'd really like some work. I said, I see you have the Muppets license. I love the Muppets. I really feel like they're not handled right most of the time. And just please, if you would give me a chance, I promise I will pitch you something wonderful and I will write something that the fans would really love. Please, like, give me a chance. And Aaron went, "You hired," because everybody else was like, I want a job. And that's the big problem. Like, the people who are handling the Muppets at Disney, there's never a guarantee that the person overseeing the property is going to even like the property. Because what happens is they just start looking at some of their prospects and they don't go, "Is anybody a fan of the Muppets here?" They go, "So who might like to work on the Muppets?" And everyone raises their hand. "Oh, I'd love to." Even if they don't understand the Muppets, even if they don't think the Muppets are funny or interesting or anything, they have no heart or soul for the Muppets. They don't get the Muppets. They think the Muppets are a bunch of shitty puns strung together. And then you go and present them with something that's authentically Muppets. Because I don't have a Jessie Blaze Snider style. My style is whatever I'm writing. Whatever the thing is, if I'm writing the Muppets, I'm trying to do the best Frank Oz and Jim Henson, and I'm listening to the Muppet Show in the background, and I'm listening for kind of little cues and stuff that I want to put into my script so it's authentic and real.
And go back to the classic stuff. Yeah.
You go to the classic, you study the classic, and then you try to bring that to life for everybody to love. And all these people trying to put themselves into the book and make it all about them and their preferences, like it kills me. It kills me because we deserve so much better.
Well, it's like we were talking earlier on Twitter about the Super Mario Brothers movie, and because it kind of like everything you're saying here kind of makes me think back to the first attempt of making a movie for the Super Mario Brothers. And that was obviously, when was that? The 90s when they made that movie?
Didn't that scar Nintendo for 20 years? They're like, "We're never going to make another movie again."
I think that scarred all of us. It was, it's not that the movie was bad. I mean, if that movie had a different name.
The movie was neither here nor there. It had no association with the thing that we love at all.
It's like, did you even play the game? Do you even know what and it's kind of like what you were saying. It's like, "Oh, we're going to make a Super Mario Brothers movie. Who wants to write the script?" And it's
dude, when you hear the writers of these video game movies and they admit in interviews they've literally never played the video game. And how hard is it to remedy that situation? Just go out, get the video game, play the video game a couple times, just so you can say you did. Even
if the instruction manual, for crying out loud. And they finally put out a decent Super Mario Brothers movie, which I was skeptical going into it, thinking, I don't know if I'm going to like this or if I'm going to hate this. And I liked it. And I liked it more for the nostalgia, the stuff they put in there, the, all the other Nintendo references that they had. Like they showed Punch Out and they showed a bunch of they showed Kid Icarus, all that stuff, all those awesome games.
On that level, on the member berries level, they brought it. There's so many great deep cuts in there. The Wrecking Crew, and really, there's some wonderful things in there. Honestly, I did a long kind of breakdown of Mario, and I got some letters on my podcast. After I did the podcast, I got some letters from people who basically said, "I couldn't exactly tell where you ended up on it." Because I came out really strong saying, "Hey, look what they did." They honored the fans, they honored the visual, and the fans showed up because we could tell from the trailer that this was going to be something that was pretty genuine to the thing that we love. But as you really start to break down some of the Super Mario things, there was two big conclusions that I came to. The first one was that the story wasn't as wonderful as a great writer could have done. It relied very heavily on all of the member berries and the visuals. And you know what? I will take member berries and accurate visuals over a great story because I know that you can do that. I know that Hollywood can match the visuals. I know that Hollywood can get the references right. That's an easy thing for them to do. But if we really want to talk about elevating this stuff a little bit and making it something that's as memorable as a film as it is as a video game, That movie didn't do it. Visually, it's great. And, and it scratches a lot of itches. But I mean, you don't walk away from that going, oh man, what a great story they told. And the second thing was that I think the big problem was the story was all about, Peach and Mario getting together and being friends to go save Luigi. The movie's called the Super Mario Brothers movie. Imagine that was a movie about two brothers, and the one brother was getting the other brother into a lot of dangerous situations in the name of trying to save some woman that he barely knows. A movie about brothers would have been so meaningful. And I think that they could have held back on some of the member berries and stuff that they were throwing out there. I think that their eagerness to get to everything and to make it appear like it appears in modern day was a real mistake. I really think that they could have kept it a little smaller, kept it to a story about these brothers saving this princess, and you could have had the story that took place in this movie of, oh, now we got to save Luigi. That could be story number 2.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, when I saw it, when we came out of the theater, and I was surprised on how little airtime they essentially gave Luigi, as though, he's player 2 and he never gets to play.
He's been playing as Luigi for forever, man. I mean, that's really the thing. When it comes to comics and it comes to video games, especially, the character is always like your vehicle, and there'll be different important details about a character that really draws you to them. And in the case of Luigi and Mario and all this, even as simple as it's the male character, it's the male character's brother. It's the one that people don't care about as much. A lot of people love an underdog. Luigi has maintained because people they prefer to play Luigi. Screw Mario. I like Luigi. All of that kind of thing within the context of every one of those stories. I mean, every one of those characters is an avatar for somebody, and they love that character. I'm Red Kirby when I play Super Smash Brothers, and sometimes I'm the Punch-Out guy because I love Punch-Out. But Red Kirby for years, all my kids knew, if I was out in the bathroom while we were turning on Super Smash Brothers, they picked my character. They knew who it is. It's Red Kirby. Dad always plays Red Kirby. That's the kind of identification. It becomes a part of our souls. And Mario and Luigi in particular, man, those are the first two. And there was years before we could play Princess. Granted, you could play Princess by the second game, but it was a while before Luigi was the one who was in trouble and had to be saved by Mario. Why not follow that patterning? We already recognize and like that patterning, and you don't necessarily have to kind of spend all your money at once. A little bit, it seemed like they were spending a little bit of their money at once and were being a bit short-sighted, considering how long these characters, the Mario Brothers games, have existed, considering how many Mario Brothers games exist, considering how many millions of copies these games have sold. I mean, why don't you just assume more great things are going to be created over the next 20 years, make a 10-year plan where you just barely scratch the surface of where we are today, allow more time for more things to be developed, continue to bring those things over time, and literally plan to pace yourself so that you never run out of billion-dollar film franchises. It's stupid.
Yeah. Well, the first the first game obviously is the very basic. Mario has to save the princess. The second game is different. I mean, it wasn't originally.
It was a different game.
It was Doki Doki Panic.
Yeah,
and they just reskinned it to be a Super Mario. So it really
Nintendo guy. I love Nintendo. I'm a big kid, so Nintendo is where I'm at. I never was a Xbox guy or a PlayStation guy. I was always playing the little kids games. I mean, I have the Triforce tattoo.
Triforce. I was going to get into that actually. One of the things I like to do on my show is talk a lot about nostalgia and a lot about the back days of gaming. When we were kids, and so growing up in the Snider house, what was it? What was the first exposure? I guess was it Nintendo was your first exposure to video games?
My first exposure to video games. My father was obsessed with Zelda, the original Zelda. It's my favorite game of all time. And famously, if you're as old as I am or a little older, you'll remember that saving on the original Nintendo system was sometimes a bit tricky. And if you hit the system while you were playing the game, it would literally reset your game. And my dad was on level 9 and I was a little kid and I tripped over his cord.
Oh no.
Lost his game and he lost his mind on me. Rightfully so. Even though as a kid I had no idea what I had just done. I was little. I was
just
little.
Tripped over the cord.
Tripped over. What's Dad? Sorry. Ah! Sorry, Dad.
That is funny. I guess he didn't save his game very often then.
Yeah, no, he swore off video games from that moment forth, and he has never looked back. Never looked back.
Oh, wow.
Like that day, he was like, "I will never play a game again," and he has never played another video game again. It's pretty
hilarious.
Funny. But my dad's a big geek, and like honestly, like Care Bear Stare. I love that man. And so anything he told me, very much like my youngest son, Grayson, if he said it was good, I was willing to give it a try.
Yeah.
He loves Star Trek. And it kind of took me a little while actually to get into Star Trek because I didn't love the original series, even though conceptually, I loved the original series. I loved that it was a positive view of the future. And there's plenty of episodes of the original series that I love. But that one didn't get me as much as The Next Generation did when I was a teenager, when I was a little older. I loved Next Generation. And I actually got into watching it more so on DVD when the DVD craze started happening. And I started watching a lot of TV shows on DVD. So I dug into Next Generation, followed Worf over to Deep Space Nine, then into Voyager, then into Enterprise, which I really liked Enterprise. And then I abandoned ship after J.J. Abrams made his 3 movies, and then he made a Black Ops show, a Star Trek Black Ops show, and then I was fucking out. Roddenberry is one of my idols, and I love Star Trek, and so that was one of my big fandoms. My dad bought me a subscription to Spider-Man to try to encourage me to read. I had like eye problems. When I would read, my eyes would get all teary. I over-focused. So I wore glasses for a little while, and they were trying to encourage me to read. And I didn't really get into Spider-Man at the time. I've never been a huge Spider-Man fan, but I did get into reading some comics, specifically Savage Dragon. I loved that book. And I was in like at the ground floor with like the mini series that Eric Larson had put out, and then the follow up. And I read the Savage Dragon cover to cover for years. And then when I was like 15 or something, I got a job at 7-Eleven, and we sold some comic books on the rack there. Remember when comic books used to be on the rack on the newsstand?
Yeah.
And I heard Deadpool was pretty funny. And that was one of the reasons why I liked Savage Dragon, was because it had a good dose of humor in it. And I ended up loving Joe Kelly's Deadpool. Joe Kelly's one of my favorite writers. I now call him a friend. And I was just blown away by that book. And that opened me up to advertisements for other books that they were doing. And so at the time, the Marvel Knights Initiative was happening, and there was a new, really good jumping on point for Joe Kelly and Steve Scrooge. Was it not Steve Scrooge? Joe Kelly and I forget the other guy's name, who were writing Uncanny X-Men and X-Men at the time. And I loved Joe Kelly. So I was like, all right, cool. I'll go over and read that. And I read the Marvel Knights book, and 3 out of 4 ain't bad. That Punisher book sucked. But the Joe Quesada Daredevil and the Black Panther by Priest was amazing. And even better, I loved. And I remember handing it to my dad at the time. He loved it. Paul Jenkins's Inhumans, another guy who I now call a friend. I loved that book. Jay Lee. I didn't know that comics could be that at the time. I thought like Savage Dragon was like this like one-off, a weird book being made by Eric Larson that was just exceptional because he was doing whatever the hell he wanted. But when I read those books and saw the type of stories and styles that were happening at the time, that was it. I was all about it, and I've been reading comics ever since. And started with Marvel, and eventually my buddy got me into DC, and like so I blew that up, and I became my dad was a comic fan, I was a comic super fan. And
so he kind of got you going into it, and then
he kind of light the fire, and then I'd be like, "Ooh, I'm taking it all the way, man."
It's good that he wanted you to read, though. I mean that's especially like if you look at today, a lot of kids, I don't know if they're reading as when we used to read, but I don't know, the kids today, are they reading like this anymore? And
such a wonderful medium for that very reason, because it is a little easier for kids where the reading doesn't come to them so easily. I mean, now I can tank a book pretty fast, and I love to read. I didn't though. I didn't at the time, and it was even kind of a slow journey for me. But the door was open just enough that I got my foot into the door of reading, and before you know it, I was like, reading's great, and I've been reading ever since. And I'm a big reader, especially when it comes to comics and good nonfiction books. There's a lot of really cool books out there about the world and medicine and things. I just always like to know, what is the reality. What is really happening here? Because we tend to get this sanitized version of the world from all of our history books and all the pundits on TV and all this shit. And the reality is there are people who work for these companies and work in the government, and they have been talking. They all write books about their personal experiences, and you read enough of these books and you can coordinate what's actually happening in the world. So, reading is so important and fundamental. And the only reason why I am as knowledgeable as a human being, to talk about real issues in the world and be able to help people in real fundamental ways is because comic books made me love reading. And then eventually I was reading everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was always that there was always that stigma about, comics and it's not really reading, which I think some people think that. And then even with video games, like you can play, like the new Zelda, for instance, there's a lot of reading in there. And then, my daughter's been playing that one. I don't. I'm like you. I grew up. Well, I grew up with the Intellivision before the Nintendo, so I played a lot of the old, the Atari games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But games didn't really have a whole lot of text in it. There wasn't a lot of reading.
Arcade games like Crystal Cat, like that. Awesome arcade games.
Yeah. Well, now it's you got games like Breath of the Wild and even the Skyward Sword, it came out on the Switch, so we bought it for my daughter, and she's been
Skyward Sword, but Breath of the Wild and that new one, I haven't been able to play the new one yet. I kind of have to space. I get like obsessed, so I kind of have to space out my playing of these games. And I just finished Breath of the Wild because I was really late to the party, but I was really excited about it. I was like kind of holding off, and oh man, Breath of the Wild is freaking awesome. The world is just so huge, and it's just plenty of the conventions that we all love from the Zelda franchise. I love that game. I really hope they do a good job with the movie and don't try to make it like stupid.
That's a good question. Yeah, is what direction are they going to take it in, and is it going to be live action? Is it going to be animated? Are they going to go back to, like, there was a Zelda cartoon. I don't know if you've watched those back when there's like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show and stuff, and they made the Zelda cartoon. It was kind of goofy.
Can I answer one of these questions in the chat?
Yeah, which one?
Did you ever hide a comic book reading it inside a school book? Laugh out loud. Well, it's really funny because I've got two. Yeah. As far as comics are concerned, I used to love reading comic books out in the open. Like I always wanted people to know I was a comic book fan. I didn't feel like there were a lot of comic book fans. Like I didn't actually go to school with people who I knew read comics like I did. I remember in college, I finally met a fellow comic book fan, my editor-in-chief of the school newspaper. I was the A&E editor, and he was my EOC for the paper on hold. And we both read books, and we would exchange stuff. Like I only know The Authority because he handed me some of those books, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you got to read this. It's great." And I remember he and I sitting at lunch, and there were some pretty girls that came over to our table, and we're both reading comic books. And as the girls start walking over, he sees them coming, and he literally throws the comic book that he's reading across the room. He's just like, "Whoom!" Like no comic book. I'm the guy. I don't read comic books. And I sat there like this. Yes. And the girls were like, reading some Batman? I'm like, yes, I am. But my funny story for at least reading, I only ever went to detention once. I don't remember, not went, but I only was ever assigned detention once. Generally, I didn't get in a lot of trouble in school. I mean, maybe I would get into trouble sometimes because I'm a little bit of like a contrarian. But generally speaking, if I was sent to the principal, I was articulate enough to be able to kind of talk my way out of actually getting in trouble for whatever the thing was that I did. But one time I did get sent to detention, and I remember I brought a book there. I'm pretty sure it was what's his name? David Barry's Big Trouble. They made a movie version of it, which is not close to as good as the book. But before the movie came out, I saw it there, and it said Elmore Leonard on Laughing Gas, and I was just like, oh, I love a good comedy. I know Dave Barry's like a pretty funny guy. I'm like, I'll read that. So I take this book, and I'm reading this book. I get detention. I'm in the middle of reading this great Dave Barry book. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll bring that to detention. I'm in detention reading this Dave Barry book, and I'm having the time of my life in detention. This book, it's one of my favorite books. It's a great book. And I'm just, and I'm trying to keep it down to a low roar because it's detention. I'm like, and like 25 minutes into detention, the detention teacher comes over to my desk, knocks on the desk, and goes, get the fuck out of here.
You're enjoying yourself.
And I went, what? Why? She's like, you're having too much fun. Get out of here.
I don't remember detention ever allowing me to read or do anything other than just sit there and wait until the teacher's like, you can go.
You were allowed to read in our detention. So I'm like, oh, well, I love to read. Everybody else, I guess they didn't like to read as much as I did. So I was enjoying some books.
I just remember sitting there with nothing in front of me and just waiting. Like I had a teacher, I think it was my French teacher. She used to hand out detentions like candy. I mean, you sneezed wrong and you got a detention. And she would just be sitting there in her class waiting. It was dumb. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about your podcast. I know you've brought this up a few times, and it'd be interesting to know why did you start it, and how's it been going?
Well, it's been going really great, actually. I mean, I hooked up with a company that is thankfully promoting the show. And so, I mean, I've done little casts, whether it was on YouTube or things, and I always have such a hard time getting an audience without putting any money to the algorithms, because I mean, like, really, unless you're playing their game, this social media game, they don't really spread your message. You really got to be on top of it in a way that, like, I just don't care enough to do that. But I have real passion as a writer. I'm an English major, and I've been just studying writing as a songwriter, as like a poet and a journalist and everything. I love to write, and for me, every style is just its own kind of game, and it's always about delivering information to people in a way that makes them happy, that they sat down for a second to read whatever it is that you wrote or listen to whatever it is you wrote. And I love to play that game. I'm a people pleaser, and I like trying to figure out how to make things as digestible and easy to understand and fun to experience as I possibly can. So, I've had a bug up my ass to do something, and I almost did it. Well, I did a show for like just a minute with my buddies called Coolest Alive, which was just like talking about all this geek culture stuff. And I had a theme song and all this stuff, and I ended up not going very long. But a friend of mine reached out to me because he was reached out to by this company, and they were looking for people who were very credible to come into the podcast space and do some shows that they could promote on their channel. So as soon as they called me, I was like, I got a theme song and I got a lot to say, and I'm ready to go. And really quickly, as I realized what it was that I was going to do, I just realized that, I'd always wanted to write something about the craft. I have a magazine that I plan to do eventually. I don't know if I'm going to end up kickstarting it or if it's going to be like a bonus stretch goal for one of the comics that we do. But I want to do this magazine called Sugar and Bones Magazine. And my approach is going to be like heavy metal magazine, but with articles by artists and writers and people writing to their 16-year-old selves in the simplest language that anybody can understand, the advice that they would have given to themselves as a teenager who wants to do these things. And, that's really what my show is. It's just a loving send up to the geek culture that I love, and talking about the ways that all of this stuff is being mismanaged in Hollywood. I mean, some of it is just so obvious and stupid. It's like if you have a visual that's been advertised to people for 70 years, it's stupid to change that visual so much that the thing is no longer recognizable. The moment that, a little girl sees The Little Mermaid and goes, that's not Ariel. Ariel's got light skin and red hair, and she doesn't have braids. You know, they tried to make this little video where they had all these little girls, these little black girls seeing the thing, and the little girls were like, oh, it's Ariel. She's black. Like, oh, of course, a little black girl is going to see a beautiful black girl as a mermaid and be like, oh, she's such a beautiful mermaid. And that's cool. But the other, you know, there are other little girls who went, that's not Ariel. And that
my wife is a big, huge Little Mermaid fan, and she always dreamed of Little Mermaid movie. And so obviously when they showed the cast and stuff, and she's like, that's not what I expected Ariel to look like. Now it's nothing to do with, because she's black. It's because it's just that's not what Ariel looked like in every iteration of her from conception. So and it's strange when you see stuff like that.
It's very frustrating to not mimic the visual is silly. You know, this new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that I came out. Why did they just make their new April O'Neil a different character? Nobody would have been mad. We wouldn't have been mad if the Turtles had a different entry-level character than April O'Neil in this universe. And, like, you know, eventually you could introduce April O'Neil somewhere down the line. To introduce a character that is not shaped like April O'Neil, is not colored like April O'Neil. Like,
basically, a name it's just the name at that point, and it's a new character.
It's not about race. It's not about it's about literally color design. Red hair, you know, like what's her name? Jennifer's Body, the chick who was playing in the recent Ninja Turtles. She's got black hair. April O'Neil doesn't have black hair. It doesn't look like the thing that I love when I see a character that you're calling April O'Neil, and she doesn't look like the character.
Yeah.
You're just doing yourself a disservice. It's foolish.
I'm big on that. And one of the movies that I think bothers me the most is G.I. Joe. Like, Transformers was great because it was, you know, you're seeing this Transformers on the screen. But G.I. Joe, I think they could have done that properly and still would have made a great movie. And I don't like the way they changed the characters. I really hated Cobra Commander. And I'm one of those people that the villain is the most important thing in a lot of these types of movies, right? You get the villain right, like with The Dark Knight, you know, you get Heath Ledger's Joker and he takes the screen and he made the movie, right? You mess up the villain, you mess up the movie. And the Cobra Commander character that they created for the very first G.I. Joe movie stunk. His mask looked like crap. The character development was weird. The actor choice was weird. I mean, everything was weird. And then the G.I. Joes themselves, they were not the G.I. Joes. Like in the original cartoon, you had like Shipwreck. He was a sailor, and you had like, you know, all of them. Like they all had a persona.
Looks very very genre looks. Like how cool would it be if they legit honored a character like Shipwreck and he showed up and instead of modernizing, they owned what Shipwreck looked like, and he was a character that looked different from all these other fucking characters. Like you make a G.I. Joe movie and you make them look like every other generic action movie you've ever seen.
They're all in black. They all look this,
Yep, the one where they had power armors in the first movie. I mean, like, how tone deaf was that in the first place? Because it just completely misrepresents and the property and the stories that we've been being told, because we were always dealing with human beings, dealing on a human level as spies and military guys, not dudes in power armors punching other dudes in power. Like that was just like so stupid. But
the way I look at it is they thought they had to compete with Transformers being such a, you know, action.
Transformers too, man. Transformers, they're so afraid to make the robots the main characters. The robots are supposed to be the main characters. Like, how about you spend a little bit more time just making us care about those freaking robots and allow them to be the main character in their own movie? And then you got a freaking Transformers franchise. This is like random pedestrian on the street meets a Transformer franchise. Every movie about some assholes who met some Transformers whose lives I don't care about, whose battles I don't care about. I want to hear about Cybertron and why Optimus Prime is lifting up his guys and why the bastards, the Decepticons, are freaking bringing them down. Like, and I'm not even a huge Transformers fan, but as a representative of the fandom and people who love this stuff, because so many of my friends are, Transformers aren't 6-inch scale. G.I. Joe isn't 6-inch scale. I always collected in the 6-inch scale action figures. So I didn't get into G.I. Joe. I didn't get into a lot of these ones until more recently. Like now I've got a couple G.I. Joes and stuff. I'm still waiting on Transformers to make an Optimus Prime that is in scale with a 6-inch Marvel Legend. And then I am all about it, man. But it's just too much to ask, I guess, that these things be more reflective of the thing that we liked in the first place. Why don't you take that thing and elevate that thing instead of reinventing it and then trying to elevate the thing you reinvented, which is no longer recognizable as the thing we like?
Well, I think what they're doing now, well, for the Transformers anyways, like the last one that came out, Rise of the Beast, where they're taking them back to the time where they belong. And I think that kind of what caused some of the problems. Like if you think about the first Michael Bay Transformer movie, it takes place in the 2000s, right? Like 2020 or whenever when did that come out? But it takes place in modern day instead of where it belonged in the 80s. And they kind of tried to fix that by making Bumblebee, the movie Bumblebee, and putting it in the 80s where it belonged.
I mean, the scenes on Cybertron in that movie are amazing. Some of the visuals, like the Beast Wars one that they did, some of the visuals are amazing. But I just sat the whole time going like, I don't give two shits about these dudes. And like now one of the Transformers wraps himself around him. That's another power armor situation. I'm like, this isn't Transformers, guys. Like, what?
No, I don't know. I don't understand that direction either. That was completely out there. But seeing Unicron was pretty cool. I mean, was
so cool. It was so cool to see that planet and that stuff. I mean, granted, it's so funny because there's so many things that are ripoffs of other things. And if you don't do it right the first time, somebody else is going to beat you to the punch. Now, by the time Galactus actually comes along and is done right, Transformers guys will be like, hey, this is Unicron. Yeah, Unicron's a ripoff of Galactus, buddy.
Well, it's all a ripoff from something else before it anyway, but
yeah,
at least they show some promise in that they're actually trying to be a little bit more I guess attuned to the and I don't know if everybody has seen the latest movie, so I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler for anybody at this point, but at the end when they show the G.I. Joe card, oh no and then you're like, okay, this is probably going to happen. But is it going to be
G.I. Joe right? So
yeah, is it going to be the G.I. Joe that we saw before? Is it going to be them? Or are they going to make a new G.I. Joe? That's what I want to know.
That Snake Eyes thing was so. I hate this convention of like anybody who does karate who's white is inherently evil and we must make them Japanese. I've got the freaking Iron Fist symbol on my chest, and they just no, Danny Rand is culturally kiss my ass. Holy shit. I live in America, man. This is the melting pot. Everything comes from somewhere else, except for the Native Americans. They were the ones. All the black culture, everything came from somewhere else. All of it. Okay, so like screw you and your cultural appropriation bullshit. If I am sitting here in love, loving something and honoring something, how dare you sit there and try to make me out to be anything short of a lover who loves something that they saw on planet Earth. And the fact that you've noticed that I'm different than the thing that I love, it makes you the racist. I love that thing. Black Panther is one of my favorite characters. I don't need Reginald Hudlin writing his Black Panther comic reminding me that Black Panther is the greatest and be-all character of all time. I'm yelling at my comic book. I know, asshole. That's why I'm reading Black Panther, because I love it. You don't have to convince anybody of the love of their fandom. And for loving these things, we're going to get shit for cultural appropriation. Fuck you guys. Fuck all of you guys. Anybody who says that shit, I just think you are just the lamest, most myopic, self-centered people that I've ever met.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we like I said before this, when it comes to these movies and stuff, and it's all, at this point, it's all, well, money is the primary thing. They're going to make money, but then they also have to tick off all the boxes, and they have to do things. They're not trying to upset people, and I don't know. I think everything just kind of gets muddled up, and you lose the story. And we like you were saying, we as fans, we just want to see Like I want to see my childhood on the screen. That's what I want to see. I want to see Optimus Prime look like Optimus Prime, and I think that was one of the hard parts I had with the Michael Bay movie. Now I liked it. I liked it, but I was bothered the entire time that I'm not seeing a single Transformer look like they should. I mean,
can I acknowledge two comments in the comments about this? Our dude's talking about Starscream and that he's actually very smart. He's a scientist and geologist, and they made him look stupid in the movie. Dude, you don't come away with an idea that anybody has any skills of significance when you watch those movies. They're just random robot with funny voice, random robot with funny voice number 2, random robot with funny voice number 3. I mean, oh my God, they did all of the Transformers dirty as far as I'm concerned. It's like the only personality that Bumblebee has is like the lovable friend of the human character. And the only personality that Optimus Prime has is the leader of the Transformers robots. That's it. They don't have any personality besides that. The Decepticons are just evil, just sort of generic evil. None of them are defined in any sort of human way. To make a great Transformers movie, all you had to do was humanize the robots and have people leaving, caring about the robots on a real human level. And there you go, success. And then the other comment I just wanted to acknowledge was he said he's got the 85 Snake Eyes with Timber. That was the first G.I. Joe 6-inch action figure that I bought when it came out. Snake Eyes with Timber. I love those figures.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, the movies, they were missing stuff. And I get it that Michael Bay was trying to, I mean, he's looking at an audience of today. He probably figured that, us nostalgia people, like us guys in our 40s, are going to run to the movie regardless. But he's also trying to appeal to a modern crowd. And then he has to bring in the sex appeal, the whole Megan Fox thing. And if you watch the original Transformer cartoons, the majority of the show is the Transformers. And then, you see Spike, and he's there for a little bit. And you get to learn all the personalities. Megatron is obviously, he's the hardcore leader. He didn't have that in the movie. He was just kind of like more of a, I guess, like you said, generic, right? And yeah, I mean, even the design of him, I was never crazy about that either.
No, they keep doing this thing where they hyper detail the characters, like to make them more real, dude. Like, do you remember the change up of Cyborg's armor at the end of that the Justice League movie, where all of a sudden he went from this stupid design that they had, where his armor was super detailed and looked like something that H.R. Geiger might design, and then all of a sudden it went to that. Oh crap! Sorry, buddy. I'm getting a phone call right now. I will text them in just a second. But it's this thing that the simpler made real and done right is actually way better than super complicated hyper deep. Like, God,
well,
I mean,
one of the things my wife, when we were watching it, she couldn't tell any of them apart, and because there was not a lot of, like you said, it was just too much detail, too much of that. Nothing stood out for each one of them. Like there was no key features that you could really tell. Like if you watch the original show, obviously every one of them looks different. Bumblebee's the little guy, he's the little yellow guy, and Jazz is the white Porsche guy, and you can tell the differences. And Starscream looks different than Soundwave, and Shockwave looks different. But then you watch the movie, and they all just look like a bunch of junk glued together. That it's hard to make out who they are, and they're all silver, and they're all the same.
They were, and I'm not a huge Transformers guy, so forgive me, but I just, in the bits that I watched, I watched that movie and a couple other things here. I was actually a big fan of the Beast Wars series. I used to watch that before I went to school in the morning, which was a great show.
I kind of like that one too. It kind of came at a time when the original show was off the air for a while, and it was nice to see some Transformers back on the air.
Yeah, and they made you care about those characters. They were robots, but I really cared about them. And, as something that's done, too, with, the voice actors, they were all very well chosen, I felt. In terms of their voice almost told you exactly who they were, and they were very definitive from each other. so much of these modern Transformers movies, I just feel like they're just constantly casting the comedic actor of the moment, or like, just the voice of the moment. It's just sort of like they're not these like definitive and iconic sort of energies that represent a certain personality. As soon as you heard one of the characters open their mouth, you kind of knew who they were a little bit right from there. And with the exception of Optimus Prime and Yellow Jacket, who is just, he's being represented by all these like little movie quotes and shit. Everybody just kind of like blurred, especially as a little bit of a non-fan, because I don't know all those guys. Like, there's certain characters that I really loved as a toy guy. Like, I really love those Destructicons, because they, you
Constructicons, yeah.
You turn them into that giant thing, like
Devastator.
Yeah, Devastator. So there was certain toys like that I did know and I really liked because they appealed to me as a toy dude. But I was kind of hoping to come out of the movie, getting to know the properties that some of my really good friends loved. And I remember leaving the theater going, I calling one of my friends up, my buddy Aaron Sparrow, going like, is this at all reflective of the Transformers property? Because, no. I did not like that.
No. What were the other toy lines that you played? Like, I grew up, I played with my Transformers and G.I. Joes. My friend was a big He-Man fan. I never got into He-Man.
I'm a Masters of the Universe guy. That was my first toy love was Masters of the Universe. I'm a huge fan of the Masters of the Universe classics. I mean, like, one of the reasons why I worship to the Four Horsemen for their work on the Masters of the Universe classics and everything they've done with that. I love the He-Man 2000 and so many of the iterations of that thing. That was my first toy love. And Ninja Turtles, in conjunction with the Marvel characters. Like I said, my father introduced me to a lot of the Marvel characters. And even though I wasn't reading the comic books, I did, as like a 9, 10, 11-year-old, collect the trading cards. And I liked all the characters. I liked that they were heroic characters. And I kind of used to just make up stories myself. So I loved to buy the Marvel character figures, and the Ninja Turtles were a big one for me, which was actually like a big inspiration when I did Toy Story for Boom Kids. Our whole first arc was all based on the prevalence of the toy variants, and that if Buzz Lightyear really existed in the real world, that there would be all these weird ass Buzz Lightyears. So by the time you get to issue like 3 and 4 of our first arc, it's just all these insane Buzz Lightyear variants, and the majority of them are based directly on Ninja Turtle variants, like Caveman Donatello and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, holding your hand being like, what the fuck is this? Seriously?
Yeah, I remember collecting. I think I still have a lot of my Ninja Turtles. And they've kind of, they've changed a lot throughout the years. I guess when Nickelodeon kind of took them over, and this is, I guess, what that new movie's based off, the Nickelodeon look. They look a little bit different now.
Somebody said about Donatello and he's got glasses and stuff. I don't mind that so much, as long as the heart and soul of the things are good, especially with a property like the Ninja Turtles, just because it has been done so many times. And, sometimes I think some of the departures that they make are quite a bit too much. But when you're starting something from the ground up, you can only repeat the same basic tenets that were done in a previous series so many times before it does get a little stale. So I don't mind so much that, we didn't get the 7th version of the same thing. And I actually like the style of the Ninja Turtles cartoon. From what I can tell, it's reminding me a lot of the Into the Spider-Verse style of the art. It looks very much like it kind of came out of a comic book. Yeah. And I'm forgiving of a couple of those little things, like, Donatello having glasses and, Raph and the do-rag or whatever.
Yeah, he's got the red.
Yeah, I can tolerate that, especially because the original Turtles are never going to go away. It's all the iconic image of those original Turtles, and the heart and soul of the Turtles seems to be being represented over and over again pretty authentically.
It seems like this version they seem a little bit younger too than
which also doesn't necessarily bother me in the context of a new iteration of the Ninja Turtles. But I do love the Ninja Turtles, but I'm not like, it's that thing. I'm okay for them to adjust a thing or two. It's just about getting the heart and soul right. I don't care if Superman has underwear or doesn't have underwear. I care that Superman doesn't kill people and is always trying to do things a better way.
Stays like Superman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I care about. The more you can bring him to life the way that I would like to see him and the way that I might recognize, I think the better. But, I can forgive small adjustments to the properties.
Well, like I was saying with like G.I. Joe and Transformers, for me, it's always the villain that I find it to be the important thing. And the same thing with the Ninja Turtles. Like, I still love the original Ninja Turtle movie, the one that came out in the 89, 90. When was it? I mean, yeah, they look like puppets. I mean, it was Henson Studio that made them, right?
Henson, I'm a huge Henson fan. I love the Creature Shop. Honestly, I can't stand that freaking Michael Bay version of the Turtles. From a visual level, the second movie, I thought they at least tried to appeal to the fans a little bit.
They did.
And
They did.
some of that stuff I enjoyed a lot more than that first one. That first one I thought was just stupid and looked awful. And
that's what I was getting at. Like the villain, like Shredder. What the heck?
He looks terrible.
Yeah. What the heck was that? And like. Even the first movie that came out, the 91, the Shredder looked decent, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, they could have polished him up a little bit more, and of course,
he was. I liked him. Okay, it was taken seriously. Casey Jones was so well handled.
Yeah,
that original Turtle.
They did the characters well, and I think they stayed true to the cartoon. They stayed true to the toy line in a sense. And then the Michael Bay one came out, and it's like, what am I looking at? I didn't like that first one.
A person who thinks that the Ninja Turtles were broken and they needed to be fixed. And I mean, so much of this shit is made by people who think the thing is broken and needs to be fixed. And I just like every time I get that sense watching one of these movies, I just like want to strangle the filmmakers.
The writers, the filmmakers, whoever decided that this is the way it's going to be. Like even like you said, the second movie was okay. I mean, they brought Krang in there. I thought that's cool. Krang was one of my favorite characters in the series.
Krang's Shredder.
That was like the first toy I bought from the Ninja Turtle line. After I saw the movie, a friend of mine went to the store and that was the first toy I bought was Krang. And even though he wasn't in the movie. In the original movie.
I remember getting the neutrinos, and they had done the version of the car, the purple flying car, and the Technodrome. Man, I used to have Apocalypse running the Technodrome, so I'd have the X-Men's Apocalypse in the Technodrome, and I'd have the X-Men go to fight him because that was for years. I had two fires, and I lost all my toys. I had one of the biggest collections of 6-inch action figures probably in the world, and they burnt up pretty fast.
Sad story.
Yeah, but I collected all the buildings. The Ghostbusters building, the Spawn Alley, the Spider-Man Daily Bugle playset, and I had a city that I made that I used to play my toys in, and I had a Technodrome that I would have pop out of the ground. I love to see that thing. What a great visual that fucking thing was, and that was like my one bummer at the end of the second Turtle movie that Bay did was they were putting together the Technodrome, but they built it into the story that if the Technodrome was complete, it would destroy the world. So I never got to see the damn Technodrome.
Yeah, they destroyed it, right? They
sent it right back into Dimension X.
Yeah, just way to go. Break the best part of the movie. I don't know.
Big pitch to IDW that just basically they asked me to scale it down because they were building their thing, and I had some great pitches. Because so much of the comics of the Ninja Turtles, they're homages to existing classic comics. So I wanted to do, I said, let's get Raph off the team, and we do a solo series starring Raphael, and we homage Wolverine comics. And we get Casey Jones, and we put him in his own comic book, and we homage Punisher comic books. And we take these bad guys, Bebop and Rocksteady, and some of these other mutant monsters that are the most recognizable, and we homage the Suicide Squad, and we go Brute Squad. And then we get a turtle from the future whose shell opens up, and he's got guns, and we homage Cable. And then we take Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and we split it in half. Teenage Mutants and the Ninja Turtles. And we have Don Donatello and Raphael leading a team, we have Leonardo leading a new team of turtles, Slash, one of the girl turtles, and Metalhead. And then we've got the Teenage Mutants led by Donatello and Michelangelo, who've got Mondo Gecko and Ace Duck and Nancy, all these fun characters that were in some of those Archie comics that they had produced during the time. Expand that freaking universe and give us more. That's what Marvel would do if they own the IP. And basically, it was like too much for them. They were like, "Well, you could pitch a miniseries," and I was like, "I don't want to pitch a miniseries." I said, "Like, you can expand this universe and make it a big deal, and people would be excited. People would be bubbling." And they were just like, "Nah, we can't. We're not going to go that far into the deep end, expanding the Ninja Turtles." Even though they were literally like the book was getting more and more popular, and then within like a year of when I pitched that, the popularity of their, I was like, "What? Well, you missed the chance."
Oh, okay. Well, I guess there's a lot of great ideas, and you never know which ones are going to get thrown out there.
Yeah, one day I'm sure somebody will do it. I mean, I would really love to write a Casey Jones miniseries homaging the Punisher one day.
He does have that kind of Punisher vibe to him, doesn't he?
Yeah,
I mean, he's kind of that lone wolf vigilante kind of. You don't really know. Well, I don't know with Casey Jones. I don't know much about his backstory. I didn't read any comics on him or anything like that. So I don't even in the cartoon. He just kind of showed up. He's just some crazy guy who would do crazy stuff. And then the movie.
With me, I see him as so for me, I wrote all this story in my mind with Casey Jones, like playing with him, because I thought his name Casey Jones was a reference to Casey at the Bat. But there is no joy in Mudville because Casey struck out. So in my mind, he was a failed athlete who was going to like go pro, and he got injured and he lost his contract and he lost his thing, and he was just mad at the world, and he picked up his sports equipment and started kicking ass as a vigilante. And I wanted to write a story about Casey struck out. He struck out, this guy who ruined his life, and now he spends his days in ripped up, sweatpants fighting crime. Because he was just like such the anti-Batman. He's like, I don't have any money, but I do have this baseball bat. Cacao.
He needs a motive or a reason to do it too, right? Well, why be a vigilante? I mean, with Batman, it's his parents and stuff for the issues with that. But Casey, why is he doing what he's doing? Even in the movie, in the 90s movie, they never really. I don't think they really touched upon it too much.
No, not really. He just kind of showed. I mean, granted, he was played great. He was really cool, but they didn't go into his backstory in any meaningful way or whatever. So I kind of just always like made it up in my mind. I remember the first person who I said that to, that Casey, after Casey at the Bat, and they went, that's not true. He's not named after that. I was like, he's not? Oh, I'm so disappointed. I wish it was. I wished it was a reference to that.
Yeah. I
think Canseco bat? Tell me you didn't pay for this. Yeah, it's one of the best lines in the movie. A Jose Canseco bat? Tell me you didn't pay for this.
I think in the movie Casey's got some of the best scenes. Like even when he was beating up Master Tatsu in the thing, and he was just like, grr, little primatine, fix that.
That's my favorite action figure too. The Donatello in the trench coat action figure with the little fuzzy mustache mask that you put on him.
Yeah,
love him, boy. Yeah,
that part in the movie when he ran by and he rolled over the car, and the driver's like, "Oh, just turtle in a trench coat." Perfect lines in that movie.
It's the turtle in the trench coat. Yeah, I really enjoy the turtles. I think there's an underpinning of irreverent humor built into them, because they were always homaging the genre of comic books, and it just played to a lot of visuals and ideas that just made you smile. Like, it wasn't so much that it was like a joke a minute kind of thing. It was more that the general thing that you were like, poor freaking Ninja Turtle, they're Ninja Turtles, this is just so weird. It's just so lovely and how weird it is.
Yeah, and the movie themselves don't take the whole thing too serious, and I think that was the other part I liked about it, is it didn't try too hard to be serious. kind of like the Michael Bay did. Right? You know, they tried to be more serious, whereas the original movie line, it's and obviously by the second one, you can tell they're just messing around. I mean, come on, like what they
the
did.
second one was having a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the visuals and like the less fun vibe of the first one really just, I mean, because the way the turtles looked, they were scary looking. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, it's one thing to make them real, and there'll be a certain amount of like scariness about that it's a giant turtle or whatever. But, you know, I think it's like if Slash looked like those turtles did in that movie, that's okay. He's the bad guy. He's the scary guy. These guys are still heroes. You got to strike a balance between, you know, the monstrous look of them and, like, you know, not so much.
Yeah, and well, even the first series, or the 90s movies, the second one didn't really go so serious as well. I mean, that one kind of got a little bit cartoony at times, and you know, you could tell they were being a little more playful, and it was a fun movie, but it was at the same time kind of over the top, you know, with the Super Shredder.
The Super Shredder, yeah. I mean, the first one's really like great. I think it's a great film, and that it really like is very, very interesting in so many ways. It's interesting. It's handled very well. It's handled with realness, and you know,
the ninja fighting in it. The ninja fighting in it's really good.
Really good, you know, physical stuff, and I think the voice cast that they chose were great. You know, Corey Feldman's fucking amazing. You know, they're real. It's really good. The second one definitely goes to a different place. I wish that they would have done, you know, Bebop and Rocksteady instead of Toga and Razor, and brought some of that, continued to bring some of that interesting realism that they had. Because it was real, but it was still funny and fun and quirky and cool. And that's the way to do it. You know, the Marvel Universe has gotten kind of over the top with how much humor they want to put into these things. You know, you forget that if you do humor wrong, you lose the ability to raise stakes and have your audience feel like people are threats. You know, it's like the moment you have the Infinity Gems in a drawer at the Time Variance Authority, like, oh yeah, they're just paperweights here. We got tons of Infinity Gems all around. Wow, you're really like taking away the strength and the power of these ideas, and you built them up, and now in an instance you made it not have the meaning that it did yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even like girls talking about, oh, how Captain America is so cute, and like, okay, you don't want to get to the point where Captain America is a meme. You want people to be able to take him seriously as a over-the-top James Bond, and you want his threats to be serious. You know, he's been fighting the Nazis for ages. You know, like a serious threat, not a joke threat, a real threat. Real threats. That's what Captain America fights. So you really got to strike a balance between, you know, having some levity, which I am all about levity. I really believe in balance. Everything that I ever write, you know, if you want to say that Jessie has a style, the one style that I do have is that everything I write, no matter what it is, it's going to have some humor in it. But that's because I believe that humor exists, and I don't believe that anything is completely humorless. You know, like, I don't think that life is humorless. I think invariably things will happen that surprise you. And when you're surprised the right way, you laugh. You know, so I mean, it's like every horror movie, they can use humor to break the tension in really good ways. And the best horror movies do have a little bit of humor.
If it's done tastefully, yes. Yeah. I think almost any movie can tastefully include humor.
Yeah, and it usually has to come from circumstances instead of just people telling stupid jokes. But
yes.
Circumstances that are like, oh, well, that's funny. I can't believe that.
One really good example of that is Ghostbusters.
Yes,
the original Ghostbusters. The humor in there, it's not. They don't try hard, and it's like it's the you know, Bill Murray style humor, the deadpan face. Like they don't have to say things. Then in the 2016, when the girl one came out,
it was silly. It
was fart jokes, and it was sex jokes, and they pushed them out. They pushed the jokes out.
Yeah, very toned.
It didn't need to be there, and that's. I think that the only thing I don't like about that movie is the terrible jokes that they say, and trying to make it funny by adding in that crap. I mean, Kate McKinnon did a pretty good job with her character, and I think if they would have toned down the stupid fart jokes, all that try too hard to make you laugh, it made a better movie.
Ghostbusters in particular is like a really interesting case because Ghostbusters really elevated a genre. It did comedy in a really rooted supernatural science fiction way that I don't think had ever been done before, or even really has been done since as well. Especially in that first film, the tone is so unique and so special. The fact that the studio did not recognize how special that tone was and did not try to recreate it, just willy-nilly selected a comedy director and willy-nilly selected the comedians of the time. Like, fuck, man. I mean, like, what a disservice you did to those women. I mean, like, seriously, it's like, they didn't write the movie. They're just the people who were cast in a Ghostbusters movie. And they show up and they're making do with what they are, and they're doing what their director is telling them to do. And they're hoping that these choices that are being made are right. That decision comes from the executives who greenlit is it Paul Feig or whatever his name? I
Paul
forget
Feig. Paul Feig.
Picked him in the first place. He was not the right choice. I'm not anti him. I think he's actually he's made some things that I really like, but you should not have let him execute a film of that tone. And if that was the only thing that he wanted to do and the only thing that he could do, then he was not the right choice for that film.
He was banking. They were banking on the name, I guess. The name would carry it through. And
big mistake. That's how you ruin intellectual property's value.
I know, and I know there was a lot of hate with the fact that it was a whole new storyline. Like you've kind
universe. Where literally one of the freaking Ghostbusters gets thrown out the window and is told that he's not Ghostbusters material. I mean, you really think that's like
throwing the original actors in there just to please the crowd, to say, okay, they're in it, but they're not in it. I mean, like Dan Aykroyd's a cab driver.
Yeah, you don't insult the original that we all love. I mean, it's just like so stupid and tone deaf. Choices like that just really, really rubbed me the wrong way. I think I still haven't seen the whole thing to this day. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and again, trying to be not a curmudgeon because I rather enjoy these things when I see them. My daughter liked it, but she wasn't exactly raised on the other Ghostbusters movies the way that I was, and I believe that pleasing the first wave of fans is your first responsibility. Sure. Second box to check is, but we also have to make sure that it still will appeal to the new audience as well. And maybe that's about casting, and maybe that's about some subtle design choices or some little things, but it's about small adjustments to the thing that is fundamentally being presented, honoring the thing that the base cares about. Because if you erode your base, I mean, look at what's happening with Disney Star Wars now. It's just like things are falling apart. The same thing's about to happen in the Marvel Universe. All the things that we love are just self-destructing because these Hollywood execs don't give two shits about the base. They think that we're a bunch of basement dwellers, and what do we know? We know what we like, man. We're the tastemakers. We're the
like
gourmand.
I have there on the screen, saying the new Ghostbusters movie. The Afterlife movie was an attempt to kind of repair the damage that was done from.
He's right. It is nostalgia bait. It's not.
It was an attempt, and
it's way better than the previous one, but
it didn't have the same substance as the original movies had. Like, it didn't have the same feel. It definitely feels like it's a different movie, and it's obviously they have different actors and it's a different angle, but at least it's in the same universe. At least it's the story continuing, and I think that's what we wanted from the 2016. The passing of the torch, and in the same world. We're in the same world here, creating a whole new world. I don't understand. And if you look at any movie that's been rebooted, they all failed. Most of them failed anyways. Like Nightmare on Elm Street had a reboot with what's the guy's name?
The guy from Watchmen.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's there. You know, I don't know. I watched it. I was like, okay, I get it. And then RoboCop, what was that? They totally they missed the point of the movie.
You know, it was really funny. The Halloween franchise that got rebooted, and that actually started out pretty good. The first two were pretty good. I don't know if you saw the freaking third one. Me and my girlfriend went to go see it, and we're just like, whose fucking stupid idea was this? It's not even about
the Rob Zombie ones.
No. They just did the three. Basically,
oh, you're talking about the three. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they just ignored every single movie that came out after the first one, and they made a follow-up to the Jamie Lee Curtis original.
Yes.
And the first one was kind of cool, and the second one was still kind of cool. Like I was with it, and if they would have stuck the landing, I would have been like, oh.
You're talking about Halloween Kills, right?
Yeah, Halloween Kills, and the last one, seriously. It's just like the stupidest thing I've ever seen. What they do to the Michael Myers character in that movie, they embarrass him. You know, it's one of the, what is it that they say like when somebody writes a comic book that like you hate and you're like, oh, I'm filing that away in the it never happened file. I know there's like a term for that people use. Like I memory hold that. You know, and there's plenty of things in my life that I've memory hold, and that was one of them, man. You know, that Ghostbusters movie, that Halloween Kills, memory hold that one.
I haven't seen the Halloween one yet. I know I think it's on Netflix or it's on one of the streaming services. I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. I saw the other two though, and I've seen the reboot. The reboot, the Rob Zombie one, was okay. I mean, I didn't mind it, but it's it's the same. It's a whole different store, or it's a new universe. But I'm just thinking, like, how many times have they tried this and failed? Like the Nightmare on Elm Street, it failed, and then so they never made a sequel. The Ghostbusters, it failed. They're not going to make a sequel to that. As much as they tried to end it, that there would be a sequel, I don't think it'll ever happen. And I think the Afterlife movie is kind of solidifying that, saying there's not going to be no girl sequel. We're just going to pretend that movie never happened. RoboCop's, that one I still am kind of, because if you've watched the original RoboCop, you know how good that movie was and how they made, they kind of blended a perfect amount of kind of satire, over exaggeration, and seriousness and comedy. It's got everything
thing to it. It does. It's a well balanced kind of movie.
Yeah, and they go over the top with the violence. And then you get this new movie where it's like, let's just focus on, let's just dive into how we make RoboCop and, make it more political. And I don't know, it dragged and the violence was toned down. I guess they did that. They wanted to keep it PG for the kids to be able to go and see it.
Brian, I tell you what, the moment there are eyes on something, it gets really hard to do a good job with it because people are like overthinking everything. And once people start overthinking, that's it. Like you get hit with way too many notes and way too many, are we sure we want to do that? And are you sure you want to do that is like some sort of interesting thing that we want to do. And they will literally hold back and pull punch. And either you end up with something really bland or you end up with something that really like reinvents the whole thing completely to try and appeal to like some false sense of modern day sensibilities, which are bullshit. Modern Hollywood sensibilities are not the mainstream sensibilities. Nobody in our society, with very few exceptions, is as extreme as they are on Twitter and in Hollywood. It's just this insane, far, far, far left thing. And most of us, who are even like, I lean left, but they're out of their freaking minds. They're taking everything to some crazy degree, and they're going back and they're turning around and they're being just as awful as the people on the right used to be when they were empowered. Stop being awful. I didn't like it when these people were awful, and I was one of the first people trying to get them to stop and get, defense of people like, LGBT community and other races and indigenous people. Like I was one of the first people, when I was younger, these things weren't being talked about. I was talking about it all the time. And then I watched as the tide turned and everybody started talking about it, and I really very quickly realized that everybody was virtue signaling. They wanted to like be included in the I'm a good guy bandwagon. And then as soon as that happened, I stopped talking because I was like, I'm not talking about this because like I want to pat myself on the back because I'm such a good guy. I'm talking about this because there wasn't any eyes on it. Now there's eyes on it all the time. It's all we freaking talk about. And they continue to try to stretch it as far the other way as possible, literally committing the same sins of the people who they accused of sinning yesterday. And they were right. Those people on whatever level, they did sin yesterday. But now you're sinning just as bad.
You've gone taken it to the other direction, and now you're just as bad as it's like you can't get to a good balance of where we should be. So we're just going to be either uber left or uber right, or
I want to say it's in the middle, unite, because most of us, most of the Republicans lean middle. Most of the Democrats lean middle, especially now. It used to be that because the Democrats were, the Republicans were seemingly the more extreme people, you'd be leaning right because you're like, they're a little crazy. But now they're a little crazy. And it basically almost makes me want to lean right, but at the same time, it's the middle where we come together where we can go, hey, listen, I can't just crumple you up and get rid of you. I'm going to have to deal with your existence on planet Earth. How do we come to terms so that our living here together isn't so bad? It's been kind of bad these past bunch of years. I'd rather see us get along a little better. What do we have to do to get there? And instead, it's just like a bunch of self-righteous people on either side when you get to the real far extremes either way. Honestly, I think the right has been behaving much better. But then you get down to it, and then some of these people are like quoting the Bible and telling you you're going to go to hell if you do X, Y. Like, shut up. Stop telling us we're going to fucking go to hell. Like, that's why you got demonized, and that's why the freaking left has run away with the friggin' society right now, because you guys were telling us we were going to go to hell because we didn't believe in what we believed in. Like, that was the mistake you made. Don't make the same mistake again. Stay cool, be more like Jesus, turn the other cheek, and and try to help everybody, and thou shalt not judge. That's the place we got to get to for the right. And then the left, they got to do the same thing. They got to walk themselves back, and they got to go, all right, even though I don't understand where you came from and who raised you and the things that you might have been taught that are different from me, that change the way you're having this conversation, I'm having the conversation. But generally, most people are just tone deaf to the way people talk. And the sort of perspective they're coming from, it seems alien to them, and it seems like they're one of the bad guys. But like, no, man, at the end of the day, we can agree on most things. At the end of the day, there's lots of problems in America in particular, like we can all agree on. Yeah, we want some roads that are nice, and we don't want the gas prices to be so high, and the infrastructure is really important, and we would like there to be things in place for homeless people so that they don't have to live on the street. And like there are very simple things that we can all generally
start worrying about the more important issues than making up crap. Even as you're saying this, I'm thinking of your father back in the day when the music industry was under attack.
Absolutely.
And I was just reading about that like earlier about that whole mess, because I know he's been tweeting that out about that what were they called, the PMRC or something?
PMRC, yeah. I'm so proud of him, about that. And he gets nervous sometimes that he created a monster because, he sees the news and the way the news wants to, portray everything. And, I constantly tell him, like, Dad, it's really just not as bad as they're making it seem. They're really amplifying minute voices that are neither here nor there. And if they weren't doing that so irresponsibly, we would see a much more nuanced conversation happening. But like, seriously, all the algorithms are meant to just sort of prop up people. They literally, like on Twitter and some of these things, they'll put you in a room, like literally your account and these other accounts, they're all in the same room. And the rooms are like this group versus this group. This group versus this group. They have like a Tinder rooms, and by Tinder, we're going to start a fire. This plus this equals fire. This plus this equals fire. I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, TikTok is blatantly doing it. They're literally using algorithms to make our freaking kids stupid. And if you go over to China, apparently, the algorithms for TikTok is like encouraging them to learn the violin. Oh, appreciate the art. And our kids are getting the most moronic shit you've ever seen.
The stupidest. Don't get me started on that Twitter or TikTok. I mean, this stupid crap that's on there, and it's pointless, it's mindless, it's designed to make these kids literally sit there and drool while they just, next, and
I got to answer this question. Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. I played Dungeons and Dragons, but I didn't actually ever watch the cartoon. I think it might have just been, I don't know what channel it was. I don't remember ever seeing it. Actually, I didn't find out about it until years later when somebody was making a Dungeons and Dragons toy, and I was like, "What's this?" Aaron, to my buddy Aaron, who's a little older than me, so he usually will know anything that I might have missed. But I played Dungeons and Dragons a bit. I played Rifts a lot. Palladium books, one of my favorite role-playing games of all time. I've played a number of role-playing games. Rifts was my jam, and I used to play that a lot with my friends. And actually, I've got my brothers into Rifts. They all still play Rifts with their friends. We've been threatening to do a campaign, so I love role-playing games, and I do have a soft spot for Dungeons and Dragons, but I happen to be a big fanboy for Rifts, more so than Dungeons and Dragons.
I do kind of remember the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon when it was out. I was definitely that Saturday morning kid. Got up, got the bowl of cereal, ran down, started watching cartoons at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I remember seeing the Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't think I don't remember really getting into it too much. I think I was too busy watching, there was a lot of different lineups. I was watching the Ghostbusters cartoon. I was watching the, what was it? Even RoboCop had a cartoon at one point. The Super Mario Brothers show. There was a whole bunch.
Uh-huh.
But I do remember there was the Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, that's another franchise where it's kind of gone all over the place. And there's now a second movie that came out. There was a movie that came out in, I think, was it the 90s or the early 2000s? There was a Dungeons and Dragons movie. It was kind of interesting. I don't think any of them had anything to do with the cartoon, though.
Yeah, I don't know sort of enough about the foundational bits, because I was a player. I wasn't the GM for those books, the Rifts books, I've read those freaking books cover to cover. But the Dungeons and Dragons books, I read the pages to make my character, and occasionally I read a couple things there. So I don't know those stories as well, and I didn't watch the animated series that they made and some of those things. So I don't have as much to say. I always say it's if I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't try to pretend. I'd rather be authentic and righteous about the things that I know about and
stuff you're passionate about.
Yeah, just be honest about the things that that I'm not. I have so many friends who are part of the other fandoms, and I rep them and defend them because I want to see them happy. So when a Dungeons and Dragons movie comes out, it's I turn to my friends and I go, "So what'd you think?" And then I kind of base my opinion a little bit around what they thought, because those are the people that I think should have been pleased first. And, and if it's Star Trek, it's me, please me first. Or if it's the Muppets, you better please me first. But if it's Dungeons and Dragons or, say even RoboCop, I like the RoboCop movies, but I'm not an obsessed fan when it comes to those ones, but there are friends of mine who really, really love that franchise. So I go to see it with them so I can enjoy it with them.
Yeah, well, it was a franchise that I really loved RoboCop when I was a kid. I was so mad that I couldn't see it in theaters because it was restricted, probably for good measure because, the amount of violence that was in it. And, of course, my favorite series of all is Back to the Future, which is, another one of those things where the story was done properly, wrapped up properly, and we'll probably never see another one. And I know that was Robert Zemeckis was saying, he's not going to allow another sequel, another whatever, because he doesn't want to ruin it. He doesn't want to ruin the story. And
I appreciate that, honestly. I really do. Talk about lightning in a bottle with Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox, and it's just all those people in that film are just great. And as a series, it's great, especially the first one. But as a series, it's great. I enjoy Bob Gale's writing. It's comments in the chat about YouTube being not quite as toxic. Yeah, I'm with you. I quit Facebook. I have a professional page. My girlfriend runs it for me. I quit Twitter. I came back only because of my podcast to sort of promote that and create a little space on Twitter, but I mean, like I used to have like, I don't know, like 15,000 followers or something. I'm like trying to minimize so I don't oversell it, but I had a lot. But you know, I hate it. I hate social media, especially the way it's like become. Like I enjoy it when I can have fun and just like make jokes and share things that I like. But you know, in general, Facebook was toxic as hell. Twitter, I'm finding toxic as hell. Like, I mean, like when I look through the stream, it's just generally just like people going at each other. You know, and I just try to look for like people sharing cool art or sharing like cool comic book projects or things that I might like. Because, you know, that's more what I'm there for. But oh my God, like it's the Wild West when it comes to these social media things. And honestly, my social media of choice is YouTube. I love YouTube. I'm a huge Doomcock fan, and I love Nerdrotic, and I love all the entertainment commentators that are hard on the material. I don't give two shits if they're not being nice to everybody. Like I don't care about that. You know, I want to see the material that I love held to a high enough standard that there's a chance that me and my children might live to see them executed at the level that I enjoyed them when they were books. They're still books, thankfully, and we can still go back and read those things. But I live for the day where I might see these things lovingly brought to life on the big screen. And I'm kind of thinking that before that happens, what's going to happen is AI is going to get so good that I'm literally going to be able to type in, adapt The Long Halloween as a great movie starring this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and like AI will just create a perfect version, lovingly adapted, of The Long Halloween, and I'll watch that. I'll watch the AI version that just lovingly adapts the thing verbatim.
We're all going to be watching movies based off of what AI spits out, and that's going to be it.
But not like AI making up shit. AI, like, hey AI, go recreate the Byrne and Claremont X-Men years as a film. These are the actors I'd like to see in it. Like, done. Like
yeah. Well, AI can't make anything new. All it can do is take what's been done and kind of rejig it and put it in a new spin on it. But it's never going to be, at least at the rate it's at now, it's not capable of
critical drinking,
originating and like creating something new.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the social media thing though, like I'm like you. I have Facebook for my YouTube channel. I mean, I do have a personal Facebook page, which I hardly ever use. And I have my Brian's Man Cave page. And then I have the same thing with Twitter. And I only like it because of connection. And that's the way it was supposed to be, right? That's what it was, is, you know, connect with people. And it's cool to see people like you on there. Seeing even Dee Snider was someone that I idolized as a child. You know, he was my hero. When I was a kid, there was 2 records I had that I played on loop. One was Stay Hungry, and the other one was Van Halen's 1985. So, you know, being in this day and age where you can actually follow your heroes was pretty cool. And then, you know, the connection that I got to, like when he put out the tweet about your podcast and said, you know, hey, check out my son's podcast.
My podcast is very funny. I've actually never had him react so enthusiastically to anything I've ever done. I literally, like, for the first like 4 weeks of my show, he just would call me every week, like, you're so smart, like, because he's a fan, you know, like, and I like, my show is like a fan show for fans, and he's just like, I just keep screaming at the radio as I'm listening to the thing, yeah, what he said. And so I was very touched by that. He was so sweet, and he liked the show so much, he immediately went on Twitter, and he doesn't necessarily do this for everything that I've done. You know, he hasn't shared my comic yet or whatever. I mean, granted, you know, he's a busy guy, but he was so enthusiastic when he had seen that thing. He just went, oh my God, Jess, like, you're great at this. People need to know. So I'm so appreciative of all the people who got turned on to the show and got turned on to me, like yourself, from him sharing it, which was lovely. I mean, it's, you know, always great when you get some nice encouragement from your father, and just from the place of him, you know, being a real fan and feeling like, as a fan, I have not seen these opinions spoken so eloquently and decisively, because I'm really, like, I'm sure of my opinion. It's not my fucking opinion. This is just like, I know what I freaking know. I've been studying this shit long enough to be able to tell you when you're making a foolish mistake. And I mean, seriously, if I was ahead of any of these Warner Brothers or Disney, they would not be having the problems that they're having right now. I guarantee you. They would be counting billions of dollars and laughing all the way to the bank. It's not very difficult to visually recreate and thematically, energetically recreate something we love. You know, you might drop the ball in one way or another here, but you could easily be satisfying the fandom and have us all on your side, and not all of us on YouTube bitching and complaining about all the freaking short-sighted and tone deaf choices that you're making all the time. It's really just so clear that they've lost the plot and they're no longer listening to the fandom. And we are the only people they should be listening to. Listen to others at your own risk.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it should be. And who knows what the future is going to hold. Like you said, we got AI now, so maybe we'll just let AI do it. Anyways, I think we should be wrapping up soon because it's been hour and a half. How long have we been doing this?
Almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours.
Is it cool if I just tell everybody real quick? Thank you guys for hanging out, and I got a sale. I don't know if it was one of you guys, but while we were on the thing, I got a notification that I got a sale on the book on Kickstarter. I so appreciate it. I don't have my hands in my dad's pocket. I do all this stuff myself. I overextended myself. I have 4 kids. I overextended my kids. I wanted to produce this book and finish it on my own. I did it the right way. Everybody who worked on the book owns a stake in it. And for 12 years, this has been going on. And this past 5-6 years, it's just been sitting there because I got shadow banned on Indiegogo. And I spent the past 5 years thinking that I was a failure. As it turns out, I'm not. And, we've already made our initial raise of $5,000. So like the book is going to get printed. It's happening. But that doesn't pay anything back for money that I laid out. And I'm in debt because of this book. And a couple other books that I was working on at the time. I did a book for Four Horsemen Studios that Greg Weisman wrote for their Mythic Legions comic book. I lost a lot of money on that. And it was all in the name of just making great comics. I love comics. If you love comics or love people like me who love this shit, please go back the book, and just consider it a donation to the future. I will owe you for a lifetime. And if you come up to me at a show and you tell me, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I got one of your big packages, or hey, I'm so-and-so, and I backed your first book, you just big smile on my face, and I'm going to give you a freaking big hug. And I will always appreciate all these people who helped me at the beginning right here, because this is just the beginning for me. There are currently businessmen who are racking up money in the Kickstarter and Indiegogo space, and they're using sex, and they're using anime, and they're using artists to make themselves powerful and a lot of money. And I don't want to see that happen all over again. We need a comic book industry and a fandom run by fans. I'm a fan. If you help me get to the top of the mountain, I promise I'm not going to take over. I'm going to help to lift up as many people as I can, because I believe that it's a community, and it's a pretty small community of people who actually read the comic books. I think something recently that I read said something like 10 to 20% of books sold are actually being read. And that puts us in a really tiny demographic together of the people who are actually reading, actually paying attention, actually love this stuff. And all I want is to connect with those people, because those are my peers. Those are my people. That's who I am. I am a reader. I am a lover of this material. And if you want to help somebody like you get where they need to go, where they can do the best work, and they can help this planet to have more wonderful science fiction and more wonderful fantasy, and the things that we love be lifted up to the prominence that they deserve, please help me out. I really.
That's the King of Kings one you're talking about, right?
Kings #1. It's on Kickstarter right now. We got 40 days left. If you need a little time for a paycheck or whatever else, but seriously, please, from my heart.
I'm gonna get the link off you anyways, and put it in the description of the video. I think right now I only have your podcast link.
I just put it in the comments, and here I sent it in the private. You can put it up for later for people to see on the thing. I just popped it into the live comments, but if you can put it up on the screen for people to see, it's King of Kings #1. It's a 4-issue miniseries, religious figures in the battle of the bands to determine the reigning ideology of the day. Jesus always wins. And for those of you who are, I'm a huge Jesus fan, but the guy in our book is not Jesus. He's basically the fans of Jesus distilled into, like, the bad fans, the fans of Jesus that have been going across the world forcing other people to convert, that have been very pushy. It's sort of a representative of that bad guy version of Jesus that is not Jesus. Our editor of the book, Aaron Sparrow, he's very committed. I don't want to say Catholic or Christian, but it was difficult for him to actually work on our book and do, because it's a difficult subject matter for him. It's a bit blasphemous, some of the things that we're saying, but all of the religions are handled equally. All the comedy is handled equally. There's 16 religions in our Battle of the Bands, and like a 17, 18, I think probably like 19 or 20 by the time you get to the end of the book in terms of being mentioned and talked about. And the only thing that I ever wanted to do really with the book, and the value that I saw in the book, was equalizing people's ideas about religion, because we just have a tendency to be a little pig-headed, and we're like, whatever we're taught, it's like that's the only thing. Well, no, that's not the only thing. There's a lot of ideas about religion all over planet Earth, and actually there's a lot of crossing, where these things cross, where their stories, the flood gets talked about all over the place, in all sorts of different cultures, and there's so many stories and interpretations. Look at the ancient Sumerian accounts. Like, there's a lot of things that can directly translate into some of the things that are interpreted a little bit different in the Bible. And I really believe that it's when we start like comparing notes and start trying to be more open to each other and have a good way to talk about it, that progress can be made. So I just feel like I wanted to bring levity to this thing, and bring it about the right way, so that future conversations about religion won't be so stuffy, and people won't be so whatever, because they'll have these funny images in their mind of some of the religion being poked at and being parodied in a way that is deserved for some of the historical things that have happened, and some of the ways that historically the religions have been presented to us. But by virtue of them all being in the same contest, it makes them all equal. And that's it. Like, for me, it's all equal. I worship at the altar of Jesus. I worship at the altar of the Buddha. I worship at the altar of Mother Gaia and every blade of grass on this planet. And I kowtow to you, Brian, for having me on this show, and to every other human being. I am your equal. We are all each other's equals. We're all little itty bitty bits of God that are here having this human experience. And I think the human experience could be a lot better than it is right now. And that comes from laughter and conversation and progress. And this book is all about just laughter and conversation and progress. And if any of that appeals to you, you'll really love the book. Otherwise, just help me, because I deserve it. I deserve a little help. I've been busting my ass. I really put my family in a rough situation trying to invest in their future. And I got screwed by Indiegogo, and it was not fair. So, if you find it in your heart, please help us out. It's not just me you're helping. It's my whole creative team. I told them that I was going to do this, that I was going to get this book done for us. And, I felt like a failure for the past 5 years not having done that. And I'm so glad that I've already been able to raise, what we have been. But if we can raise more, we can just finish that second issue and finish that third issue and finally start on the fourth issue. And I just want to get this miniseries done. This was my first comic that I ever tried to make happen, and it stalled out halfway through. And it's just like been one of the most disappointing experiences of my life. But these past month of promoting this book and getting the word out has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, because of people like you, Brian, and because of people like the ones in your audience. And I appreciate all the kind words and you being a part of this conversation this whole time. I love talking about this stuff. This is my passion. So,
well, yeah, you could totally see your passion and the energy. Is this a book that you're hoping will be sold in regular stores, or is it something you're going to try and sell yourself, or like how are you planning on doing this?
I'll be selling it myself at conventions in the future. Even though like I might not do a big print run. Like this book might end up, the first issue might end up only getting printed in whatever quantities like we sell, and then I'll do like a new cover for when we raise for issue number 2 to do this whole little mini series. You're very welcome. Thank you. But I do hope that when it's all done, because I want it to all be done, because I don't want there to be big gaps between the release and the 4th issue isn't done yet. So I just want to be able to finish the 4th issue before we solicit it into mainstream comic book stores. But I would like to eventually do that. I might present it to Image. Image put out a book that I did a few years ago called Blacklight District, which is super cool. If you ever want to check it out, it's free. It's www.blacklightdistrict.co. There's 6 little short comic books, and they go along with 6 songs. The lyrics are printed in the book, and you follow the lyrics with the visual story. It's really cool. It's first of its kind. Nobody had ever done anything like it, and I was really proud of how it came out in the end. And it's free if you go to check it out. And a lot of big name people who I adore who worked on that book. But you know, I'm hoping maybe King of Kings might come out from Image once we get the whole book made. But I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff in this space. Me and my buddy are working on a nude book next. We're doing something. It's called Fucking for Our Future, and it's a science fiction book where there's a planet Glon, and the women and the men have separated 1,000 years ago, and now the women's cloning machines aren't working anymore. So like they're about to die off, and they have to basically go find the men who have de-evolved into animals and are living in the woods as these giant Bigfoots with big penises that drag on the ground, and they've made these power armors, and they're going out to collect sperm samples because we got to fuck for the future, for the future of womankind. We need that sperm. So it's basically a cautionary tale about some of the warring going on between men and women right now. Very, very funny, played for laughs. And we've got a series of covers where we've got one clothed cover, and then we've got one where her breasts are exposed because they've got like a button on the power armor that flashes. But then there's another button that makes the boobs get bigger. So we've got a series of covers as the boobs go bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's really funny. And then I got 2 others lined up with 2 of my besties. I'm doing a Star Trek parody that has a sex angle to it that's really fun, using sex for diplomacy. And then there's a Star Wars parody that I'm doing with another buddy of mine. It is going to be just a...
You got a lot on the go, man.
I
don't know how you have the time for this.
Shit. I can't stop thinking. I have ADHD, and like I every time I come to like a break, my brain's like, oh, let's do this, and then I go off and I start doing other things. But I've never been so excited to make all the things that I'm making right now. And I have a book coming out from Merck Publishing called Guns and Angels, which is 2 issues into 0 issue, and the first issue got raised for, and that book's really great and worth checking out. But please follow me, you know, get on board with this Kickstarter. It's $5 for the PDF, and then you'll be in my wheelhouse, and I'll tell you when Fucking for Our Future's coming out, and you'll know when you know, the Star Trek and the Star Wars parodies come out, and it'll be within like the next 6 months as all these things slowly start, you know, finally getting done and coming out. So seriously, you know, I'm going to be doing this for a while. I'm not going anywhere. I've already, you know, made enough of a impact with this first Kickstarter that I got my plan, and I could figure out how to do it with just the money that we've raised so far. But I could use more, and you know, I really appreciate everybody who's coming out to support the book.
Definitely. Like I said, I'll get the link down there in the description as well, and hopefully we can, you know, maybe I could even break this long ass conversation into like little videos too, and kind of focus on, you know, talking about that. Anyways, yeah, I'd love to thank Jessie for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I know he's a busy man. He's got a lot on his plate. He's got his family. He's got 4 kids. I mean, I have 1 kid, and that's a lot. I don't know how you do it. 4 kids.
They all have my energy. I created monsters.
Well,
they're all very sweet though too. They're all a bunch of Care Bears, so you know, I got that.
There you go. You got your Care Bears. Anyways, yeah, thanks for coming on, and you know, maybe I'll have you back on when the
absolutely, man. I'd love to come on when the next time, next one comes, or you know, whatever. But it was a pleasure, and thank you
so much to talk about.
Cool on Twitter, and it's been nice, you know, get to know you on there, and I appreciate the support there as I just got back. So, you know, seeing likes from Brian and retweets from Brian, I really appreciate it. You're one of the first people who saw my voice and went, oh, okay, Jesse's got some nice things to say, and I got his back. So thanks for having my back, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and thank you to everybody who hung out with us for this conversation. You guys are great. Follow me on Twitter. I'm Coolest Geek JBS. And you know, feel free to message me.
Well, they probably follow me, so they'll see my retweets, and then they'll find you. Anyways, well, thanks everyone for coming out, and we'll see you on the next video.
Thanks.